Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the channel. My name's Eric. Today we're going to do what will be the first of hopefully multiple top 5 videos. In this one, we're going to check out my personal top 5 adventure puzzle games. Obviously, these are my top 5, and this is pretty subjective. So if you have other favorites, feel free to comment below and let me know what yours are. Maybe I'll see a few ideas of games I should check out in the future. So let's go ahead and get started, starting with number 5. So as you can see, the first game that I picked is the Talos Principle. So I discovered this one I think a year or two ago, and it's definitely pretty interesting. It's the shortest way I could describe it really is it's Portal 2, but without the jokes in it as much. It's a pretty serious game. Sort of tackles some issues of things like the creator-creation relationship. As a Christian, it's kind of interesting because it definitely doesn't have like a Christian message. It sort of emphasizes free will to the point that it defines it as sort of the requirement to sort of rebel against your creator to an extent, to test your limits until you finally sort of escape the created world you have. And so at least that's one layer that at which you could read it. There's probably multiple interpretations you could have. But the puzzles are really interesting, and it's definitely thought-provoking, whichever perspective on all those things you have. It has, honestly, some really familiar looking objects and things like the boxes and pressure panels and things like that, and then directable lasers, a lot of things that really sort of harken back to Portal, I would say. But it's a very different atmosphere, a very different tone, and I definitely enjoyed it. I was able to complete the whole thing without having to look up any spoilers or anything like that, so I was happy about that. That's not always the case, but I always hope it's the case. So feel free to take a look at this one. I definitely recommend you check it out.
Welcome. I am Professor William Maythorn. Although I bear responsibility for trapping you in this world, I have no intention of harming you in any way.
So the next game I'm going to talk about is Quern, Undying Thoughts. I actually just played this one recently. I did a live stream of the whole thing, actually. Actually, all of the games that I'm going to talk about today, I have live streams of, and I'm going to include links to those playlists in the description. Most of them are more like walkthroughs, because I usually played them by myself at some point before I streamed it, and then I decided to go ahead and do it live. This actually, I think, is the only game that I streamed, and the stream was actually the first time that I played it. I actually really enjoyed this one. It's very much in the tradition of Myst and Riven, real classic puzzle adventure games. It also reminded me a little bit of the Room series, which are on iOS. Those are a lot of fun, but some of the way that you can manipulate objects and examine them and things like that, and then use them once you find a place where they will come in handy. Story is pretty unique. Mixes in a little bit of Eastern philosophy, things like that, which is interesting. It harkens back to Myst and Riven a little bit in that there are multiple endings. Won't get into any spoilers there, but it's pretty interesting. So feel free to check this one out. I definitely recommend it, and we'll move on to the next game.
I realized the moment I fell into the fissure that the book would not be destroyed as I had planned. It continued falling into that starry expanse of which I had only a fleeting glimpse.
So the next game I'm going to talk about is probably the grandfather of all PC puzzle adventure games, really. Of course, I'm talking about Myst. So I played this back in the 90s, real close to when it came out with my brother. Um, Honestly, I was obviously really young then. I was born in '88, so I was too young really to figure out a lot of the puzzles on my own back then, and so it's all kind of a blur as to what I figured out and what my brother figured out and what our friends figured out, because we had a manual where they had taken notes on a lot of things. But again, I've live streamed the walkthrough of this as well. To this day, it's fun to just walk through it every once in a while by yourself. Really, there's some issues with the game. It's not perfect because really they were just breaking new ground with it, and you really never can take that away from the game, and that it's how original it was at the time. But since then the creators have talked about the fact that some of the puzzles are kind of arbitrary and aren't fully integrated into the world, but they really picked up. They really sort of improved a lot of that in the sequel. So we're actually going to be talking about a little bit of that next, but I won't give any spoilers about the game, but story is very original and very interesting. And really, if you want to get into PC puzzle adventure games, I have to recommend this one. It is available now on iOS, and it works great, as a touchscreen game. They, remastered it for that, and it works really well. In this particular one, the first Myst was re-released as realMyst in full 3D, which was great. And then on Steam now there's a realMyst Masterpiece Edition, which is generally what I play when I go back to it. So I'd probably go ahead and recommend the Masterpiece Edition. It's great. It, along with the original realMyst, where they went to 3D, has some extra has an extra age in it, and has some extra gameplay. Which is pretty good. It's fun to sort of explore that. So anyways, again, feel free to check this game out, and we're going to move right on to number 2.
Thank God you've returned. I need your help.
So naturally, if we're going to talk about Myst in this list, we have to include the sequel, which was Riven. Now, in all honesty, this is a far superior game to Myst, in my opinion. They did a much better job in this game integrating the puzzles so that they're very much a part of the real world. You're really trying to figure out mechanisms and machines and things that are, they have a purpose, that functions in that world, and it's not just a puzzle for puzzle's sake. So they did a great job with that. And not only that, but the game is much, much bigger, a lot more gameplay. Now, again, much like Myst, I don't have a perfect memory of which puzzles I figured out myself, or which ones my brother figured out, or which ones friends figured out, and then we sort of integrated into what we knew. But it's a huge game, lots of puzzles, and there's actually one very large puzzle that sort of arches over the whole game that, to this day, I'm not always able to get it when I play through the game, because it doesn't really change every time, but you can't memorize it. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's a very tedious, difficult puzzle. With it, you have to gather information from everywhere, and sometimes I solve it. Sometimes I've just got to look up the chart that tells me how to do it. But I've beaten the game a couple times, and it's great. The story really fills out and completes the story that starts in Myst. Myst is a pretty good, well-contained story in and of itself. Riven is also, very attached to it, and they integrate together very well. Now there were more Myst games after these two, but they weren't the original creators of Myst and Riven weren't as involved. Rand Miller did come back and play Atris in the continuing games for continuity reasons, but he didn't write it and get as involved as he was in the first two projects as such a central role. So they put their stamp of approval on those games that followed the first two, so they're canon technically, but I would still say that Myst and Riven, those two games are very complete in and of themselves, whether or not you continue on to the other games. Some of those other games are good, some are not as good. They're all pretty enjoyable though. But really, I cannot recommend Myst and Riven enough, because together, I'd say they're, you know, the grandfathers of PC puzzle adventure games in a lot of ways, and they have influence, I'd say, to this day. So definitely check out Riven. Awesome game. And we'll move on to number 1. So for number 1, this list would not be complete if I did not include probably my all-time favorite adventure game, the Neverhood. Now, this game came out 95, 96, I believe. One of the main contributors to it, artists and writers, was Doug TenNapel. You might remember him from Earthworm Jim. That's his character that he created. And he's been nice enough to respond to some of my tweets and things like that. I've started reading some of his graphic novels and stuff, and you know, he's an excellent artist, excellent writer. So this game, I remember I had a demo of this game that I got on like a compilation disc with a magazine or something, or it came with another game, I'm not even sure. But I had the demo for a while and I really wanted it. And finally, back when Media Play was still around, me and my brother and my dad all went to buy it. And I remember my dad was hesitant because on the back it said ages 17 and up, and he thought it was because it had like mature content in it or something, which it doesn't. It's just really silly. The puzzles are just pretty challenging. And anyways, we ended up getting it, and this game, like Myst and Riven, is basically imprinted on my brain. I can just, for the most part, just walk right through it. You know, I have a walkthrough uploaded if anybody's interested in that. But yeah, it's probably the only game I've ever played that's pretty much fully claymation or is made to look like claymation, although there's sort of a spiritual successor that Doug TenNapel has made since then called Armacrog. Also a pretty good game, but I don't think anything could ever match or come close to the Neverhood. It's got an awesome soundtrack by Terry Taylor. I've been listening to it in my car as of late because it's on iTunes or with Apple Music. So that's fun. Story's really interesting. It's actually taken from the Bible in some ways. That's what the writers themselves actually said. And so there's a lot of interesting themes in there, interesting allegory, things like that. But it's also just really hilarious. There's just so many funny parts of the game, funny physical humor and things like that. So again, can't recommend this game enough. Only problem is, unlike a lot of the other games that I mentioned, it's not really available in stores or on Steam or anything anymore. Doug TenNapel's had a lot of trouble, you know, reclaiming rights to it so he can re-release it or anything like that. But you know, there are discs of it floating around on eBay, things like that, once in a while that aren't horribly expensive. To get it to work again, there's a great program called ScumVM. I've been able to get this working on it as well as a couple other games. Again, the Neverhood, probably for nostalgia's sake, just one of my favorite games ever, if not my favorite game. You know, subjectively, that's the case. Objectively, is it the best game ever made or puzzle game ever made? You know, maybe not. But again, this is just my list, and this is just one of the games that informed my childhood and my upbringing. And you know, again, please check it out. It's a great game. So those are my top 5. Thank you all for watching. If you feel like subscribing, please do. There's a link right in the corner of the screen, right over here if you want to check it out. If you hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell, you'll be notified of new videos, but also live streams. A lot of these games, like I said, I did live stream walkthroughs, so you'll be notified if I go live if you hit the notification bell. And thank you again for watching, and hopefully we'll do another one of these top 5 videos in the future. If you have any ideas for other top 5s you'd like to see, feel free to comment on it. If you have favorite adventure puzzle games that I didn't mention or that you'd like to see me try, feel free to comment. Again, leave a like if you enjoyed. and we'll see you around in the next video. Thanks for watching.